Well, good afternoon. I want to say thank you for sticking through the week, coming to the last session today. I know it's been a rough week. Everybody partying until 4 o'clock in the morning. I was glad I didn't have the morning session on Thursday. The afternoon session seems to be fine. My name is Wendy Wilkes. I'm a senior program manager on the Office 365 customer adoption team. And I am going to talk through the Exchange Online Protection service that we have, which is part of the next generation Office 365 service offering. I have a question though. How many people in here are familiar with or currently using FOPI? Okay, so I'm going to go through the EOP stuff, but I'm going to also point out how things are different from FOPI to EOP so that it's easy to map what you do now in FOPI to what you will be doing in EOP. If you have any questions along the way, please just move over to a mic and go ahead and ask them because the subjects switch along a little bit. So when we're talking about the particular area where you have your question, go ahead and just ask the question. So the ability to get the malware and the spam out of your email and keep that load off your server is the benefit of being able to do that filtering in the cloud. We take all that load off of your system, and we make sure that the only mail that your servers actually have to manage is mail that's already been cleaned. Right now, between FOPI and EOP, we're processing a billion messages a day. And that's down a lot from a few years back. About 3-4 years ago, we were doing up to 5 billion messages a day. The botnets were completely out of control. But we're down to about 1 billion now because we've gotten really aggressive about tracking down those botnets and making sure that they're not allowed to send out a lot of spam. Reputation's super important, and making sure that good mail is getting out to your servers and getting through us. So in Exchange Online Protection, we have 3 different anti-malware engines that we use to make sure that the viruses that are being sent to your mailboxes don't get through. And they are updated continuously throughout the day. Some antivirus programs get daily updates, but we pull ours much more frequently than that. We have enterprise class reliability. Our network is broad, and if we have a problem in one area or in one data center, we just take that data center out of rotation, leave the rest of them up, and you don't even ever notice that there's a problem on our side. The mail will continue to come through and be filtered in general. With EOP, we have integrated our admin experience into the Office 365 portal. So when you get provisioned into Office 365, you would just go to the same logon page. If you're using Exchange Online or if you're just using Exchange Online Protection, both of them will use the same administrative interface. The same mechanisms will be used for managing your systems, and it is all one consistent, clean look and feel. Putting your domain into Exchange Online Protection is very similar to the way you did it in FOPI. You'll go into the Microsoft Online portal and you'll add your domain. You do the domain verification against your DNS the same as you did with FOPI, and you activate the domain for services. When you're ready, then you switch your MX record over and the mail just starts coming through. We have a lot of different anti-spam rules that you can put in place, and I'll go over those in a minute. And then different actions you can take on the anti-malware. So you've got a little more flexibility now than we had before. And the ability to create transport rules in EOP is a lot cleaner, more intuitive, and more Outlook-like than it was in FOPI. It's a significant improvement. I'm very excited about the new transport rules interface. Also, in Office 365, we have the directory synchronization, which we also had in FOPI. But now, the directory synchronization into Office 365 spans across any Office 365 services that you may use. So if you also have SharePoint Online or Lync Online, that user synchronization would extend to those properties. And in FOPI with our directory sync, what you got was safe senders, and you got users, and you've got all their proxy addresses combined into one user. And in EOP, you can use those users and groups from your directory sync for transport rules. And you can have distribution groups that are built based on attributes and not just proxy addresses. It's a finer control that you have over what with those users. If you have virtual domains in FOPI, which we use for intelligent routing, you can still do that in EOP, and you can base it on a group that you manage within your own on-premises Active Directory. It's much simpler than it is in FOPI today. So when you log into the EOP Administrative Console, there is you have a protection section that you can go into, and this the anti-spam settings that you have to manipulate are they're a little bit different. So where in FOPI we used to do IPs, you could do IP allows using internet or the inbound connectors or using policy rules. Now we actually have a location called connection filtering, where you can put in your allow lists and your block lists right there, and so that they're in the spam interface. And then there's this other thing that we've got now where we have a safe senders list of domains that Microsoft trusts as legitimate senders. We know that they are clean senders, and so you also have the option in there to apply that list of domains so that you don't have to put allow rules for those guys. If they are already safe listed by Microsoft, then you wouldn't have to use your own transport rules in order to make sure that that mail's getting in. So the sender recipient filtering, we've got in addition to the connection blocking, we've got, let me just go back to the connection filtering. So we've got two different types of reputation filtering that we apply based on connecting IPs. And so we block about 80% of the spam that we're going to block at the IP layer. And when we allow those connections in, we take the time to monitor the messages that they're sending so that we can pull the data from those messages in order to improve the effectiveness of our spam rules. So if we know that somebody's got a bad IP, we don't just stop the IP and stop learning about the messages that they're sending. We go ahead and use them as a tool for making our spam rules better. Once the message is accepted into the network, then we've got content filtering that we do on those messages. So we've got databases of known spam that we can do fingerprints against those databases, and if we know that it's a spam message, then we'll tag it as spam. And we've also got different heuristics that go through and evaluate the different properties of a message in order to identify the messages which we think are spammy. And then we also have some internal databases that we use where we've got specific domains and senders, not just IPs, but domains and senders that we have identified as people who should not be trusted to send mail, and we mark those messages as spam as well. So the connection filtering is what I was actually talking about when I said you could put your own IP addresses in, right? So you can define your own IPs that you want to trust or block based on your own experience with them. If their IP is at risk of being identified as a spammy IP, a lot of newsletters have a high risk of being blocked as spam. You can just put them in there, and then those IPs will be granted access into the network for your domains, and even if they're on the block list that Microsoft uses. We also have a couple of different new knobs in our spam filtering. So the spam action that you have in FOPI today, you've got one spam action that you can have for your domain, whether it's xheader or sending the messages to the quarantine, or you can prepend the subject with the spam tag. In EOP, we have the ability to take different actions based on how spammy the message is. So if it's obviously spam, then you can send it to the junk mail folder. And if it is high confidence spam, which is even more obviously spam, then you can take a different action on it. You could send that to the quarantine. and then you could keep that really high spam score mail out of your network completely. The actions that are available in EOP for taking for doing to the spam, you can delete the messages, which you can't do in FOPI, and you can quarantine them, or add an X header. The default behavior is to move to the junk mail folder. So if you're when you get moved from FOPI to EOP, then the settings that you have today, they'll move with you. But if you were to sign up for EOP brand new, then the behavior that is designed to work is we add a header to the message that will stamp an SCL score on it that would end up delivering the mail to the junk mail folder of the users. So then any safe listing or block listing that the user has could be applied at the Outlook or at the client level, even if you don't do directory sync. You do have to put in 2 transport rules on your on-premises server in order to monitor for the header change that we put in there, but it's pretty easy to do. You can also prepend the subject line with text, and you can define what that text is, and you can redirect to a catch-all address. The additional spam filtering rules that we have in FOPI today, we have carried over. So if you're using any of those today, they'll still be there, they'll still work. We added another one, which is pretty cool. We have a tag that we put on the messages now that identifies those messages as bulk mail. Bulk mail is, you may have heard the term bacon. Bacon, it's not quite spam. People like bacon a little better than spam, but you may not want it in your email environment anyway. Not strictly an unsolicited email, but still a time consumer. So you can take the bulk email message, and we will add the points to that to make it tagged as spam, which would route it to the junk mail folder so that the people could read it later. Okay? So the question was, if you enable this tag, does it route the mail to the junk mail folder? If your spam action is to route to the junk mail folder, then that is what would happen to this message. If your spam action is something else, right, whatever your spam action is, that action would be taken on the message. Okay?
Can that be turned on per mailbox or per group of mailbox, or is it all or nothing?
It is across the board. But you can, though, the header is stamped on all the messages. This just takes action in the cloud on the message. You can also create transport rules on premises to take action against specific people or groups. The header is present. This just takes a cloud action on that header. Any other questions? Great. Oh, sorry. I got lights right here, so. So in FOPI, that's actually the spam score. It's not the SCL per se. The SCL is something that is stamped by an exchange server from FOPI. FOPI doesn't actually stamp that SCL. But that spam score wouldn't be configurable, but the SCL on those messages can be configurable. In EOP, that's how we manage that, is we will stamp the SCL and take action based on that SCL. We'll give it a spammy SCL. But if you're a header geek like me, you got the X Big Fish spam score that is in your FOPI mail today. That you can write rules to take action on that score, but you will have an SCL and EOP that you can use. And you can also create transport rules that will modify that SCL. So that, for example, if you need to make sure that a mail from a specific person is allowed into your network, no matter what the spam score was, then you set up a transport rule to add the SCL to not do spam filtering on it. And it will mark that with a -1, which tells Outlook, it's trusted, don't do anything with it, just leave it alone. Good question. Okay. Oh.
Does the SCL score come into effect only after it passes the basic IP filtering?
Yeah, the SCL score is not stamped on the message until it gets into the spam filtering part, yeah.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yep. Question?
This bulk mail tag.
Yeah. So the question is, does the bulk mail tag apply to internal bulk mail servers? Well, it's going to depend. So most of the time, internal mail doesn't route out through EOP. So if it doesn't route out through EOP, then it's not going to matter, right? It's not going to apply at all. If the mail does route through EOP, then there are ways that you can set up. I would recommend setting up a transport rule if you know for sure that that you have this bulk mail that you want to get in. Just set up a transport rule to recognize some unique value. They can do it on headers or whatever of that message, just to make sure that your SCL is up. And in that way, you would be able to still keep the bulk mail on for everything else, but you'd be able to make an exception for your own. You're welcome. We have some other knobs that were not quite as good in FOPI. So in FOPI, you had the ability to block messages with policy. You could take policy action on messages based on their language. And in EOP, we still have language. And if you had that in FOPI, it'll be carried over. But we also have the ability to block based on geography. So we will take a look at where that message is coming from. And so you can specifically keep out messages from areas where you know that you have no business need to get those mail, to get that mail. So the default, like I said, the default setting in EOP for a brand new customer is to route the mail to the junk mail folder. We've had a lot of requests for people to be able to have an integration with their quarantines in FOPI. Well, we have a junk mail folder, so we should just use that. So that's the direction that we've gone, is we set that up as our default. And like I said, you do have to set up some transport rules to make sure that you'll catch that and get it routed correctly on your server. But we'll set those tags in there so that the messages would land in the junk mail folder. With the directory sync, you will be able to get your safe senders and your block senders up into the cloud, so that we will be able to take that into consideration as we're doing the mail filtering. So if you have the junk mail folder setting and you're syncing your safe and block senders list, you are pretty well guaranteed to get the mail you want. You still might get a little bit of extra mail. I'm not saying you won't. But the mail that you really wanted to get should get through, because we're not doing anything to inhibit that. We also have the ability to use the quarantine. And in EOP, the quarantine is quite a bit different. In FOPI, in order to actually access the messages that are in the quarantine, you had to add a user, and then you had to log into the quarantine, and then you had to pull that user up, and then you had to look through all their stuff. We have designed an administrator interface now that uses search. You don't have to put users in. You could find all the messages that match the same subject line, and you can release them all at the same time. I don't know if any of you have ever had a message that was sent to that got sent to the quarantine, and then you had to log in to every single one of those and release them one at a time. Much, much easier to administer the quarantine in EOP. We don't have end user access to the quarantine, though. So your end users will not, at this point, if you signed up today for EOP, your end users would not have the ability to even know what was sent to the quarantine. Quarantine is still an action that you can do in transport rules too, right? So you will have spam and policy messages in this quarantine. Question? So the question was, can you export the global whitelist and blacklist? Well, so as far as I know, you can't, because what you're syncing to us is a hash, right? So we can't see what it is either. We get a hash of what your safe list and block list is. But if it's in your own Active Directory, then you or do you mean the service? Sure. So yeah, the statement was you can set up a global whitelist, which means, like an allow rule for a domain that applies to your entire organization. And you would see that in the transport rules. So that's the way that you would set it up in FOPI today. If it's not synced from your users, if it's not their own personal safe senders or block senders, that's the question? Yeah. Yeah, that's just done in the transport rules. I'll show you what that looks like. It's super cool. I geek out on it, sorry. Okay, so from the quarantine, the administrator can report them as false positives, which is when a message got tagged as spam and it wasn't spam. And a false positive will actually send a copy of that message to our spam team, where they will go through and they'll figure out which rules need tweaking in order to try to avoid tagging that message as spam. Not all false positives will result in a rules change. A lot of false positives are specific to the type of mail that you wanted to get. But from a service perspective, they're still so questionable that we don't alter the rules. The same is true for reporting spam. Sometimes it's obvious, and we definitely take action and update those rules. Sometimes it's a kind of iffy. And to be honest, we prefer to err on the side of a little extra through than not enough, right? Because business critical mail being tagged as spam is a much bigger problem than inadvertently delivering spam to the inbox. So you can report as false positive. You can also just release it. If it's, their aunt's newsletter that she sent out because they have the anniversary party coming up next month, it's probably not worth reporting as false positive. But you can still release the message, and then it'll be let through the system and delivered to your customer, to your end user's mailbox. Again, the safe senders and block senders are applied through directory sync. And so if your end user has a safe sender and the message is identified as spam, it'll still let it through because they're safe sendered. Coming up in the next few weeks, we will have the spam notifications. They're not there today. But in a couple of weeks, the spam notifications will be turned on in the service. And so if you're using the spam notifications today in FOPI, they'll look almost exactly the same. You can see that fundamentally the only difference is the logo, right? And now it says Office 365 instead of Forefront Online Protection for Exchange. The format is very similar. Since there is no end user access, if you have end user access enabled today, in FOPI, then they can click on the subject line and it'll take them to log into the quarantine. That's not there anymore. But they can still release it to their inbox, and they can still report it as not junk to the spam team so that they can tweak the rules. The spam notification interval can be configured between 3 and 14 days, just the same as it is in FOPI. So the question is, how do they release it? So you see I think there's a red dot. There we go. Release to inbox. It's super tricky. They click on that link and it calls to the service, and the service releases the message and it delivers through. Question?
Currently in FOPI, the interval for the notification is between 3 and 14 days.
Mm-hmm.
Right now we have it set for every day. Will there be an option for time of day? Say 9 o'clock in the morning, users expect it to get a quarantine summary.
So the question is, can you configure the actual time of delivery for your spam notifications if you have it set to every day? Right now in EOP, we don't have every day. So we have only 3 days. But we're going to come up, we've got a feature coming that is even cooler. So even with a 3-day interval, what they're going to get is they're going to get a little button right here, a little tag thing up here that they can click on and generate an ESN on demand. So as long as they've got the spam notification that was sent to them like 2 days ago, they can click on it, and then it will give them a fresh one that is current as of that minute. And they can do that every hour if they're looking for something. If they do that 3 or 4 times, though, they probably should let their administrator know that they're expecting a piece of mail that's just disappeared, because if it was spam, it would have been sent to the quarantine and show up there. Any other questions? Okay, question? This is on, yeah. As it is today, right? Office 365, it's just that EOP is part of Office 365. So that's why the logo's changed. But if you have Exchange Online or if you have just Exchange Online Protection, both of them can use the spam notifications, which is true today in FOPI as well. They cannot. The only thing they'll get is the sender and the subject and when it was sent. This is the information that they would get. The question was whether they could view the message before they release it, and the answer is no. Question?
Any plans to offer the
So right now we're talking about that with the honestly, with the number of customers that actually have their users logging into the quarantine. And so with the option to generate the spam notification on demand, or the ability to get it sent to your junk mail folder if you want to have instant access to the messages, we're just trying to figure out if that's really worth investing in. Okay. So the reporting of false negatives, which are messages that have been tagged as spam that are not, and false, oh, no, backwards. False negatives is we didn't catch it as spam and it should have been. False positive is we called it spam and it wasn't. That hasn't changed a bit. Even the addresses that you'll send them to are still messaging.microsoft.com. And so we have an Outlook junk mail plugin. If you don't have this now, you should get it. It makes the reporting of the false negatives super simple. It just integrates right into Outlook. You set it up, and then you get a right-click option, junk, report junk. And it will automatically grab the headers from that message and package them up along with the spammy message, and it'll send it through to the spam team for analysis. You can also multi-select. So if you have 5 pieces of spam all at the same time, not only can you scowl and be angry, but you can send them all at once. And then the spam team would go, oh no, 5 pieces of spam. Sorry. The routing is very similar to the way it was in FOPI, right? The messages come into our network. We have multiple servers and multiple data centers that'll accept that email. One of the things you get in EOP now, though, is regional routing. So a big requirement or a request that we had from a lot of our European customers especially was the ability to restrict their mail flow to Europe. We had customers in the U.S. that wanted that as well, but it was a really big pain point for the European customers because we could sort of pretty well do U.S. routing, but it was harder in Europe. Now we got them both. So the MX record that is registered for each domain is no longer the shared mail.messaging.microsoft.com. You have a specific MX record for each of your domains. And so the routing for that domain will go to the region where your mail is supposed to route through. So the message, if you have a North American tenant, a company, then the messages will come into one of the North American data centers. It'll be filtered. It'll have your settings where you want to have that message delivered, and it'll just go through. It goes through the virus scanning first. Like I said, we have 3 different virus scanning engines, and we process the message through all of them, constantly making updates to those signature files. If the message gets past that virus scanning engine, then it goes through transport rules. This is the same place that we did policy scanning before. Now we do it with transport rules. And if the mail is found to be spam, it's tagged in that, if it is found to be clean, then we send it through to go through the spam scanning. At that point, we'll apply the safe senders and block senders list. So if we've got mail coming to a specific person and they have a block sender for it, we'll eject it at that point. The content scanning and heuristics that we've got, we do SPF checks. So we have some ASF rules that you can put in, you can turn on. If you have senders that use SPF and they use it correctly, it's a really good idea to put this SPF check on. It is the strongest anti-spoofing tool we have. Downside is if their SPF record is not correct, we're going to flag their mail as wrong, and then you're going to have to tell them to go fix their record, and that's always a fun conversation. The bulk mail filtering also happens, so we stamp that bulk header in there so that the messages can be treated as bulk mail. And the international settings, and if the message gets through all of that, then we'll go ahead and deliver it into your server. So the question is, if they don't have their record correct, can you put them in a whitelist and bypass that check? Yes, because the transport rule processing happens before the spam processing, and then it would match the transport rule and it wouldn't go through the spam processing at all. The other thing is the SPF, the ASF rule, the additional spam filtering rule for SPF checking, that's not on by default. So if you have, I recommend you enable it, but it really is dependent on the senders having good SPF records, which can be a little tricky. But you can definitely safe list them. For outbound filtering, you will just set up your smart host, and you'll point that smart host to the same record that your MX record will go to. So it's the same customized protection.outlook.com, sorry. And then the messages will route to the region that they're supposed to go through for us, and we will process them. We'll do the antivirus scanning on them. We will do your outbound policies on them. We will spam scan them as well, going through. And if we find that they're spam, we actually have some more tools for you to know that you're sending spam from your servers. So we have the ability to set up notifications. So you can be notified at an email address or a pager address to be told that you've been compromised, or that we think you've been compromised, or one of your users has been compromised. And right now what we do in FOPI is support scrambles like crazy and tries to track somebody down, calling them on the phone. And so this is a much better solution where you can determine who gets the notification when you've been identified as sending bad mail. The other thing that we do is we have 3 mail pools now. And in FOPI we had 2. We had the regular good mail pool, and then we had the high-risk delivery pool. So we still have the good mail pool and the high-risk pool, but we also have added a third for the bulk mail. So if you are sending bulk mail, it will not, or if, more importantly, one of our other customers is sending bulk mail, it won't go out through the same IPs that the good mail does. And so then if there is a problem with the reputation of any of those IPs, it's not going to impact your good mail. Any questions on that? Okay. Yes. Yes. The question is there reporting? And yes, there is. All right. I think there we go. So with EOP, we get the ability to actually strip attachments, which we didn't have in FOPI. Our action in FOPI was if we found that the message was infected, then we would drop the message. We would not deliver it at all. So now we have the ability to strip the message, or strip the attachment, and then we will put some text in there to let the recipient know that their attachment was stripped off, so they can contact the sender and say, if you meant to send me that, thanks a lot. But they can follow up with the sender to find out what was supposed to be attached. The notifications that we had in FOPI are still there. They have been improved somewhat. In FOPI, you had to have notifications enabled inbound and outbound with the same custom subject and reply, but you can do them separately now. So you can have a different reply for the inbounds and for the outbounds. The administrator notifications, if you want the administrator to get an email to let them know that a message was found to be virus infected, then we can send that off to the administrator so they can investigate that as well. This is where it gets cool. So the Admin Center UI is so clean. You log in to Office 365, and I'll show you this in a demo, but you just drop down the admin console or go over to Exchange Online Protection, and this is what it looks like. For the anti-malware and anti-spam settings, then you'll go into the Exchange Admin Center, go to Mailflow. Oh, this is transport. Oh, well, I guess I didn't go into the details. Okay, sorry. I'll do that in the demo. So the protection right there, that's where anti-spam and anti-malware settings are. But the mail flow is where you would configure your connectors, which is how you route the mail to your on-premises system, where you'll configure your transport rules. And one thing to keep in mind on the connectors is that the naming on the connectors has changed a little bit from FOPI. In FOPI, an inbound connector meant it was responsible for the settings on an inbound connection to your mailbox, and outbound was outbound from your mailbox. And in EOP, we now have the service as the directional hub. So we have inbound connectors for connecting to the service and outbound connectors for leaving from the service. So you'll have outbound connectors configured for delivery to your on-premises domains. So in FOPI, you've got the mail delivery settings that will be translated to an outbound connector in EOP. So the transport rules, as you can see, we've got a nice little wizard now. You can create new rules, and the rule options are a little bit different if you have Exchange Online and EOP, or if you just have EOP. Because of the presence of mailboxes in the cloud, it does make a couple of the options a little different, but fundamentally they're very, very much the same. And once you learn one, you know them both. But you just hit the plus sign and create a new rule, and then you can select, all of these different options. If the recipient is a domain or a user or a member of a group, or has this header, there's lots of different options for configuring your transport rules, and the flexibility is really, really cool. So the action, so after you set up the condition, then the action that you have to tell us what did you want to do with the message, right? So for example, if you need to set up your virtual domain, the intelligent routing part, then you would say if the sender is a member of this group or the recipient is a member of this group, then deliver the mail out through this connector, and you would set up a connector for that. You can block messages. You can, like I said, you can add the SCL to not do spam scanning on the messages, and then that would give them an SCL of -1, so Outlook would just leave it alone. Add additional recipients. You can apply footers to the messages. The same way we had it in FOPI, you just do it as a footer, as a transport rule now. And you can modify the message properties to, actually, I don't know. I'll have to look at that. You can secure the message. If you have the Exchange-hosted encryption, you can route the message through the encryption gateway, make sure that the messages are all encrypted going through. And you can also add prepend the subject line. Rules, you can test the rules or you can enforce them. Testing rules is always a really good idea, because sometimes what you think you're going to set up to happen doesn't always happen, especially when you start manipulating rules with regex. I highly recommend you test them. The testing with the policy tips that's a DLP feature. So if you don't have, so EOP and DLP, those are not available at the same time. You'd have to get the Exchange Online or Exchange Enterprise with Services to get the DLP. But you can test it, choose the one without policy tips, and that's testing the rule without actually taking action on the messages. You can also tell the rule how long to be in use. So you can start it, if you've got a newsletter that's going out or a survey that's going out across your company, and you need to have that mail allowed in for a 1-week period, and after that you don't care, you just want regular spam scanning to happen again. You can turn the rule on Monday, turn it off on Friday, and then you don't have to worry about it again. Okay. Okay, so this is what the Microsoft Online Portal looks like when you log in. And you can see just on the landing page there on the dashboard, we've got some reports already there. My test company doesn't really have a lot of mail flow, so they're not going to be real pretty, but the reports are in there. in order to get over to the Exchange Online Protection part, this is an Exchange Online tenant, but Exchange Online Protection, the whole thing is in the drop-down, and what you would see is Office 365 and Exchange Online Protection there. And that'll sign you into the Exchange Admin Center. Where we've got the ability to set up new rules. So I always end up choosing more options, probably part of that being an email geek. I'm going to apply this rule if the sender is well, that's not going to work for this. Hang on. Cancel. A member of this group. And so with directory sync, we will be able to choose a group from here. And you would just type in the name of the group that you've got and be able to add it. I'm going to add a user. Come on. So if the sender is this person, I want to forward the message to redirect the message to following outbound connector. Maybe I don't have one. Host a quarantine. So I'm going to quarantine everything he sends. Unless the recipient is me. I'm logged in as Bonnie. You have also audit severities, and this comes up in reporting. If you want to, because we have transport rule reporting where you can see how many high severity audit transport rules that are being hit versus low or medium. And so that's just one of the different ways that you can pull out how used your rules are. So I'm going to go ahead and mark this one as high, and it's a simple rule, so I'm going to enforce it instead of test it. And stop processing more rules is just the same as it is in Outlook. If you want to make sure that if that rule matches, we stop looking at other rules to see if they might also match. You choose to stop processing more rules, and then that will keep the messages from being impacted by other policy rules or transport rules. This is also something that's new. Defer the message if rule processing doesn't complete. So in the event that the message is so large or has an issue with being scanned so that it can't be processed all the way through, you can defer it so that you can hold it back so it can go through again later. That keeps us from skipping the spam processing and the transport processing on those messages that for one reason or another didn't finish their scanning the first pass through. And in FOPI, when you set up a policy rule, it takes 35 minutes to an hour usually for that to actually kick in. In EOP, since we're using transport rules and we're writing directly to this service, it takes about 15 minutes. And sometimes it's even faster. It's a much improved experience with being able to get those rules into actual use. So the protection part that I was talking about earlier also, there's a default anti-malware policy that is in place. There's also a default, I'll show you the default spam policies too. But the default settings are to delete the entire message, but like I said, you can also strip the attachments, and you can strip the attachments and add custom text to let the recipient know that their attachments were removed. And the notifications are set up here too. Notify internal senders, external senders, notify administrator, customize the notifications for the bounce messages that you want to send back to the person who sent it. The connection filtering here. I'm sorry? Not at the question is it possible to quarantine an attachment so they could be released? It is not at this point. So the IP allow list is really simple to configure. Usually. Okay. No. Awesome. There we go. No? All right. Oh, there we go. So you'll add your IP addresses there. And then you can use a single IP address, or you can use CIDR if there's a range of IPs that you need to allow. One of the advantages of this type of in FOPI, if you had single IPs, those were able to propagate all the way out to the edge of the network, and so those would be allowed in for your organization. But if they were CIDR ranges, the entire range wasn't propagated to the edge. It wouldn't be matched on those messages until they actually hit the policy review. With this, they're both going all the way to the edge. So if it's a series of IP addresses or if it's a range of IP addresses, they're getting all the way to the edge so that those messages will get into your network because they're on this list. All right, let's see how much I've closed everything. Okay. Okay. All right, and enabling the safe list there, that's what I was talking about before. We've got some list of senders that we have trusted. We know that they're good senders. We have a relationship with those guys. And so if you want to also trust them, then you would just check that box and then they would be allowed through because of their presence on that list. No. And I don't know how, I think it just changes so much that publishing it would be really hard to do. But I don't know yet how to find out who's on the list. Yeah, exactly, right? And so the other thing in FOPI, our transport rules, or the policy rules in FOPI, were fundamentally unlimited. You could create as many as you needed to create or wanted to create. And in EOP, there are limits on the number of transport rules. You can have 100 transport rules, and their regex character count, all rules combined, can only equal 20,000 characters. So you do want to try to take advantage of some of these service-side opportunities to safe list people if they're trusted, instead of using your own transport rules on those. But I'll have to find out if that list is communicated. Question? Yep. Correct. Originating address, right? Well, you wouldn't put internal IPs. So that non-routable IP is an example, because what we find is that people will try to put IPs in that we use as our examples, and we won't allow you to put in an internal IP. So a non-routable IP wouldn't be allowed on the list. The last hop so the IP that we're looking at is the last IP in the message, in the header, that's not us, right? Correct. Yeah. So if you have, yep. Yes, this is IP whitelisting. It would. No, so this would not prohibit those IPs from being SPF checked, but it would allow them into the network if they were blocked. Do you know what I'm saying? So if you want to. Yep. So the. Yeah. So I would recommend that you use a transport rule to safe list the domain, right? Mm-hmm. Follow up with me after. Explaining how to set that up is going to take a little bit of time. I have to think about it, and I'm not in the right headspace, so sorry. So this is where we would configure what in FOPI is called the spam action. So if the obvious spam, we have the choice to move it to configure things to move to the junk mail folder. We tell you right here that you need to make transport rules on your on-premises system in order to make sure that those messages are going to route to the junk mail folder. And if you click on the Learn More link, it'll take you to the article that tells you exactly what those transport rules need to look like. You can take different action on the high confidence spam. So if we know darn well that it's spam and you just don't want it in your network, you can send it to the quarantine, you can delete it, you can do different actions so that the majority of the marginally spammy mail is getting through to be delivered eventually or not, however you have it configured, but you can just take different action. The quarantine, you can actually now, this is also new, you can specify the number of days, up to 15 days, that you keep the messages in the quarantine. So if you don't want to keep the messages there for the whole 15 days, you can shorten it. We have some customers who are down to 7 days just because they just don't want to have to try to keep track of it. If somebody reports a mail that has been missing for more than a week, they just tell them it's gone. We're not going to be able to find it. You need to go back to your sender and have them send it again so that we can figure out where what prohibited it from delivery the first time. And if you have your settings configured for X header, this is where you would specify what your header is. Not delete, that's not going to be helpful. Redirect, you can set it up there to deliver to a specific address. I don't recommend you do that. That mailbox is going to get really, really full. So redirect for a short time maybe, but it's not generally the best idea for managing that spam. You bet.
For the international spam,
Yep.
is Microsoft global company actually identifying spam in certain languages?
Yes. Yep. You do spam filtering in multiple languages. Yep. We have actually spam team members, humans, across different locations that speak multiple languages that do build our spam rules. So the outbound spam preferences, you have the option to configure it so that if some message from your system has been identified as spammy, we can send a copy of that to your administrator so that they can see what it was that was identified as spam. Also, if you end up having a sender or your whole network blocked because of spam, then we can set it up here, and then you will be notified on that address in order to help fix the problem so that you can be allowed to send mail again. And here's our quarantine. So you just would use search. You can search based on message ID if you have it, sender address, recipient address, received time. It's so much better than what we have in FOPI today. You're gonna like it. It's really great for policy or for spam. But from an administrator perspective, leaps and bounds better than what we had before. So PowerShell is available if you have Exchange Online, but not if you only have Exchange Online protection. Absolutely. It's all doable in PowerShell if you have Exchange Online. Our reports have gotten a lot cooler too. I thought the FOPI reports were pretty good. They got way cooler. So you can see a clear view of what's happening in your network. So you would get to have a top-level view of your received mail, your received spam, malware detections, the sent spam. That's not a comfortable spike. But my favorite thing that we've done in EOP is we actually have an API that you can use to pull these workbooks for reporting against. And when you connect, there's a little tool, utility that you download onto your desktop, and it works with Excel 2013. And you just put in your credentials in that tool and you query, and it will pull down up to 60 days worth of reporting data for your company. And you'll be able to see everything and manipulate the data within Excel, and it is awesome. You can also write against the APIs directly with C#. And we've got articles online that talk about how to do that. If you want to write your own tools to pull against that API, you absolutely can. That is amazing. That is something that we've had requests on that a lot. And so I'm very excited about that. The message tracking, the information that you get in EOP is very similar to the message tracking information that you get in FOPI. You get the sending and receiving IPs. You get the subject. You get the subject now. You get the delivery status. You get, sender, recipient, date, time, all that stuff. And actually, in the reports that you can pull down, you get all that data in the reports too, including message ID in everything. You betcha. We have got better support for wildcard searching for sure. I think you can do all mail to a specific person or from a specific person now in EOP. Question?
Yeah, in FOPI currently, you have to use the on Microsoft.com address for all tracing. That's what we've been told, and that's been our experience. We can't search through FOPI with our own domain name. So you look surprised, so I'm assuming that EOP...
I have the most transparent face in the world. Is it not terrible? I'm very surprised.
We've been real surprised, too. It's not been a good experience.
I can think of no reasonable reason for that to be happening right now. There are some mail routing scenarios where if the mail is going through on premises and coming back into Exchange or coming into FOPI to deliver to Exchange Online, like in a hybrid scenario, then you would need to use the user at mail, domain.mail.onmicrosoft.com to find those messages, because as they actually came into FOPI the second time or the first time, depending on where your MX record points, that's the address that would have been captured by FOPI. So in that case, then you may need to use the onmicrosoft.com domain, but it would be specific to the moved mailboxes to the cloud that are, their target address is that. Does that?
We do have a hybrid situation.
Okay.
But all the mailboxes are in the cloud. But
If all the
addresses are the on Microsoft address.
So if you have hybrid, but they're all in the cloud, what's the hybrid part?
Well, we just finished.
Oh, you just finished.
Migrating all of them.
Okay. And your MX record, was it pointing to on-premises or pointing through FOPI?
Been pointing to FOPI for a while now.
Okay. And so those messages, Were you FOPI before, or you were Exchange Online only, and you've moved to the cloud?
Well, when we initially migrated, we were Exchange Online with an on-prem spam solution,
Okay.
and all traffic was going through the on-prem side.
Okay.
I can understand
So
then.
that's why. Yep. But if you're routing your mail to the cloud, then you absolutely would be able to trace the message going to the original recipient. If your MX record is pointing to FOPI and you're delivering to Exchange Online, then that target address is no longer in play. And so
Yeah, it's still the only way to trace.
I would be interested in following up with you on that, because that just doesn't make sense to me. Question?
So in FOPI, there was a 30-day limit on tracking. Is that still the case?
It is not the case. The limit on the message tracking is down to 7 days. What we found was I know it's the wrong direction. What we found was that about 99% of all message traces were taking place within 48 hours. So we really have, at this point, we've got that down to 7 days to be able to hit the majority of escalations. However, you can still get up to 30 days, but you will have to contact support. Support can get the data for you. But please feel free to provide that feedback that you would like to have longer retention in your message trace. Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead, please. We need the feedback. Any other questions? Question? So right now, to do that, you would need to download your workbook. So when you download the workbook, then the message details that you can get there, you can do a subject search in the workbook. So where I was talking about, you can do the pull against the APIs, and with Excel, you can do queries in there too. And so you'd be able to search on specific subjects inside of the workbook. I know the workbook is more. It's probably 1,000 in the UI, because the query takes a long time. And so to build that and get it back to you in a reasonable amount of time, I think they probably kept it at 1,000. I can find out. I have to check on it, but that's easy to verify. Anything else? So here's just a list of some of the differences between FOPI and EOP. Most of the things, as you've heard, have gone from FOPI to EOP, no problem. There are a couple of things that we don't have. This end user access to the quarantine isn't there. Spam notifications are not there yet, but they're coming. Our regex story has gotten a lot better. We had a subset of regex that was supported in FOPI policy. Now we use the full .NET regex engine, so much more flexible. Regional routing in FOPI was only US, and now we have US and Europe in EOP. Intelligent routing still supported. It's just got a new name. We used virtual domains for that before. Now we use criteria-based routing, and we have instructions on how to set that up, but effectively it's a group that routes out through a specific connector in order to make their delivery destination different than the main domain's delivery destination. Reporting is way cooler. Spam management is still the same with the addition of the bulk options and the new international spam options. Still 3 engines in FOPI, 3 engines in EOP, and the quarantine access I talked about. One other thing that we have that's not there is the deferral notifications. So if we have a hard time delivering mail to your domain on premises, then those in FOPI you had the ability to configure an email address, an out-of-band email address that would receive that notification that we were stacking up. We don't have that yet in EOP. I expect that we will get it. I don't have any idea when at this point. Right now, EOP is available. If you sign up for Exchange Online Protection right now, you'll get an EOP tenant. If you want to try it, because you have FOPI now, go ahead and sign up for it. Sign up for a 30-day trial. Costs you nothing. Don't use your production domains. You would be able to. Don't do it. But try it out. It's really very easy to figure out how things work. a lot cleaner, less cluttered, and the pop-up instructions, I think, have been done very well. You can buy the standalone version. You can get it with eCal with services, includes EOP, and it's part of all of Office 365. All of Office 365 is coming through FOPI and EOP, and as they migrate from their current version of Office 365 into the next wave, they're all moving into EOP. You will be migrated from FOPI to EOP at the point where you get scheduled, like 30 days before your transition date, you'll get an email saying you're ready to go. If there are any issues that would make it so that you would not be able to go that we can identify on our side, then you'll get a call from us or a specific targeted email from us to let you know that there's this issue and we need you to please take a look at it because we want to make sure that you get migrated with the highest integrity possible. I saw a hand. Okay.
Was that at the same time as your Wave 15 upgrade?
It is the Wave 15 upgrade. Hey, question? Absolutely. Exchange-hosted encryption is supported in EOP and Exchange Online Wave 15. If you have encryption rules today, they'll move right with you. We have automatic processing for all of your policy rules that you have today in FOPI. They'll be migrated for you. There are very few that don't go. We've got like the message size limits. Those aren't going to go. That's not something that's supported to migrate. And other than that, pretty much everything else will go. Question? Policies transfer over as transport rules. If you're so our policies, actually what we'll do is we'll merge them. So if you have 15 policies that are domain allow policies that are applied to all of your domains, those will be combined into one policy rule. So we do that automatic conversion for you. If you're set up with policy rules that for some reason we're not able to consolidate for you, we'll give you a call. And in fact, we probably already did. Most of them we're able to consolidate very cleanly. Question? Yep. Yeah, the question is, does the disclaimer or the footer get carried over? And it does. It's just a transport rule where you put the disclaimer on the transport on the messages. Okay. Question?
Currently with the FOPI, we have policies that apply.
Yep.
So any message that was quarantined by policy does not appear in the quarantine summary?
Correct. Transport rule policy quarantines do not show up in the spam notification. Correct. That has not changed. The spam notification will be generated based off of only those messages that were sent there because they were identified as spam, which includes those matched with an ASF rule.
So how would we monitor messages that were quarantined by policy?
Well, the same way you do in FOPI, right? You could set up administrator notifications to know that the messages were quarantined. Question? You will need to modify your MX records again. Yes. Well, let me back that up a little bit. Are you Exchange Online or are you Exchange On-Prem? Then you do not. You guys won't have to. So because you already have a specific MX record that is specific to your own domains, then that will go with you. That's fine. But for our FOPI on-premises customers, all several thousand of them are using the same record. And so in order to make sure that the mail is going to route to the new system instead of the old system, the MX record and the smart host record on their send connectors locally must be updated. But you guys should already be set up. If your on-premises smart host is configured to mail.messaging.microsoft.com, you should update that to be the same as your MX record. So check that. Anything else? Okay. Ooh. All right, good. This is my summary slide. So with Exchange Online Protection, you have got the confidence that we are taking care of your mail for you to make sure that only the mail coming through is good mail. I appreciate all of your attendance here. I really do. At the end of the week, I wasn't sure I'd have anybody show up, so thank you. And if you have any questions, I'll be here for the next, I don't know, 2 to 3 hours. And I'll be at the party tonight, so if you want to come to the party, you can find me, and if it's not too late, I'll still be able to answer your questions.